Welcome to the sixth annual Tucson Festival of Books. My name is Javier Duran. I'm professor of Spanish and Border Studies and director of the Conference Center for Creative Inquiry here at the University of Arizona, the moderator of this panel. We would like to thank the City of Tucson for sponsoring this venue. We also thank Pima County for sponsoring this session. The presentation will last 1 hour, including questions and answers, so please hold your questions to the end. At the conclusion of the session, the authors will go to the signing area to meet you and autograph their book, Uncharted Terrains. And out of respect for the authors and your fellow audience members, please turn off your cell phones right now. I want to hit a click. Thank you. So I would introduce the three authors immediately. And then we will begin in the order in which I'm introducing them, the presentation, short presentations, and hopefully we'll have enough time for more commentary towards the end. Professor Ana Ochoa or Leary is an assistant professor in Mexican American Studies. She co-directs the Binational Migration Institute here at the University of Arizona, which carries out collaborative, interdisciplinary, and binational research into how border enforcement impacts communities. Scott Whiteford, Professor Scott Whiteford, is Professor of Latin American Studies here at the University of Arizona. He's the co-editor of Globalization, Water, and Health, Resource Management in Terms of Scarcity. And also, he's author of the book, Changing Water Management Strategies in Mexico, and Seguridad, Agua y Desarrollo, El Futuro de la Frontera México-Estados Unidos. And with that, we'd like to begin with Professor Ochoa. Leary.
Thank you very much, and everybody for attending here. One of the things that we've considered in this book is how some of the complexities of living on the border as it relates to immigrant subjects has been considered. So in our particular book, as you might imagine, we address this particular issue by the viewpoint of researchers who are out on the border trying to research this phenomenon that we all are familiar with. Some of the things that we've learned from this exercise is the complexity of the environment as it relates to research. As you all know, most of you who would live here, is that we live in a very complex and heterogeneous environment. We have commerce, we have immigrants, we have smugglers, we have travelers, we have tourists, and some of the things that we learned in trying to navigate this complex range of actors on the border is that each one has its own story to tell. And as researchers, the field is open in terms of putting those stories out in terms of the struggles, the successes, the enforcement environment. And what we've learned is that there's a complex mixture of everybody's goals, as some of those goals are often thwarted. So this book came as part of a binational collaboration in which we sought papers and researchers to come together and speak about the challenges that they met in terms of the ethical practices, in terms of the challenges of trying to have a scientific research project where everybody seems to try to avoid you. So this is an issue is, you know, immigrants, what they want to do is put as much distance between the border and themselves. So basically it comes to finding them, sometimes chasing them down. In some cases, such in my case, immigrants were tired. They really don't want to speak. They do, but you know, sometimes you're catching them in between routes. You're catching them between where they left, where they've already suffered impoverishment, malnutrition, hardships, and they just want to get to a safe place. On the U.S. side of the border, that hardships continues as they try to eke out a living amidst laws that prevent them from reaching their full potential. So that itself has other methodological and ethical issues, such as do you ask them about their legal status? How can you ask them questions without them feeling uncomfortable or feel threatened by those questions? How do you gain confidence and respect for their plight when knowing that all around them they are very much stigmatized and mistreated? So those are the environment, the social factors that are really important if we want to get the truth of the matter. Many other authors have talked about the difficulties of asking about immigration status. People are loath to share that information. And out of respect for that sense of privacy, we've had to adjust our methods and our questions in order to get at the truth. So these are some of the challenges that we faced. We had about 35 authors submit papers about the challenges that they experienced while doing research on the border, contending with violence, contending with stigmatization, contending with the illegal act of crossing the border, even if that act was solely to provide for families and try to improve their life. This book was financed in part by a grant from the Department of Homeland Security, which in itself caused a lot of ethical dilemmas within ourselves. It turns out that after we proposed the project and they approved, first of all, they wanted to see what we were writing. But then after that, they actually lost interest in what we were writing and finally decided that they weren't interested in knowing what we were writing. So that was the better for us, and in part resolved the ethical dilemma of using money to finance a project intended to reveal information about the situations while taking money from an organization whose motive for existing is to prevent the crossing. So I will leave that for now, and I will go ahead and cede the time to my colleagues. Thank you.
And just to remind the audience, it's a really, really dense book. It has a lot of topics. So the panel decided that focusing on the immigrant subject to begin the panel would be a good point of departure to begin the conversation. There's so many things here, and you read the book, you learn a lot. Professor Whiteford.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this discussion. At this point in American history, in the last poll by from the Pew Foundation, 75% of Americans were strongly in favor of immigration reform. But very few really knew what type of immigration reform would make a big difference. We're delighted that all of you are here because in one way or another reflects a curiosity and an interest in the complex mosaic that makes up the U.S.-Mexico border and beyond in both directions, in the direction of deeper into Mexico and deeper into the United States. The border, and many of you live on the border or in this border region, but I just kind of step back and I think this book captures it. The border is made up of multiple borders. It's a mosaic of sections that have different ecologies, politics, economics, and the border has two sides. It has the Mexico side and it has the U.S. side, and this is why the collaboration with our Mexican colleagues is so important in terms of trying to get a grasp of the dynamics of the region. Too often we have books just written by people either popping down from New York and saying, I got it after 3 days, or someone that doesn't read Spanish and doesn't really want to go over to the other side.